Hey, Jack. All right. You got this stuff?
Yeah, all cleaned in oil.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Let's get it on.
Who are these guys?
It's my theme music. Every good hero should have some.
Live from Springfield, Missouri, the one, the only, He's But Green.
Excuse me, can I get a cup of coffee? Black? Can't you see we talking? White?
Hey, get your music.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry, I muted myself there for a moment. Happy Superman Day, everybody. So,
Thank you.
today we will be discussing, first and foremost, we're going to start out discussing the impact of Superman, just for a few moments, because it is very important that you understand why today is important, not just in comic book history, really pop culture history. And then we'll get to the main topic, which is the Roddenberry archive. But first, let me say hello to everybody in chat. How is everyone? And looks like we have a few.
Yes, we have Sci-Fi Mombi.
Sci-Fi Mombi. And of course, Andy Morrow. Wow.
This is where we ask everyone to please help out and tweet the stream out, because we all know that YouTube steps on these kind of shows and doesn't like people to know we're on. So if you could help us out by just tweeting from the link of the browser, not only will that kind of get the word out, but it wakes up YouTube. They're like, oh, duh, people actually like this show. Hello, good morning, everybody. It's I guess I should say happy birthday tomorrow to happy birthday tonight to the United States of America, Paul Revere's ride.
Yeah.
I told him it was a bad idea, but I did give him a fresh horse. I'm a Highlander. What can I tell you? I was already here. I ended the war on the right side. I had the Italy outlook about the American war for independence.
Okay.
You foolish colonials call it a revolution. There's never been a revolution in this nation. It was a war for independence.
Wow.
That's true, actually.
Well, it's good that you ended up on the right side finally.
You know what? I fell in love with a lovely lass from Massachusetts, and that was the last time I was married.
Oh. Must have been that Bee Gees song. Anyway.
Absolutely. That and Yankee Doodle is just a hell of a song. I love it. And, it's just, I'll march under a snake flag any day. I did it with Thulsa Doom. I'll do it again. I did it for George Washington.
Yes. But, he was a hell of a guy. Shame about his teeth.
But we're here to talk about Superman. Wow,
yes, we're going to talk about...
What is the significance of this day to Superman?
Well, thank you for setting it up. Today is the day that the first issue was actually premiered. People got a chance to actually read Superman. And
so Detective Comics #1, holding the car up, the iconic most that might be the most groundbreaking comic book cover in history, right? What is 1933?
Not so much detective, more like Action Comics.
There you go. My mistake. My copy's way in back, and I keep that one in the safety deposit box.
But basically, two kids. I call them kids. Two young men who had both attended Glenville High School in good old Cleveland, Ohio, had finally broken through with a character that really seemed to embody a lot of what was going on during this period in history in the United States. Now, Superman is not their first character, but it's the one that got basically, I mean, the character just blew up. But one of their first characters was Slam Bradley, who was more along the lines of a detective, Gumshoe, and they also created the character Doctor Occult. But Superman seemed to be an experiment in creating something kind of different and taking advantage of really something that was really popular with a lot of young people, which was science fiction. Science fiction was in many ways, science fiction was to the youth of that time what rock and roll would be to kids growing up in the 1950s. And it was something that a lot of young people were really getting into reading. Thus, all of the whole thing about, for a society that had a lot of publishers and also publications, not just books, not just paperbacks, but also magazines and comics. Comics had been around for a few years. In fact, the original publisher owner of National Comics is the father of the modern day comic book. And he was the one that came up with the idea that instead of reprinting comics that had appeared in newspapers, which was what comics were up to a certain point, he came up with the idea of just creating brand new content and publishing that. Ta-da! So, you had
That's really just quickly a Newtonian moment there, right? That is a quantum change.
Yes.
If we're talking about now, were these comics in the newspaper? Was the newspaper comic section, was it more fulsome? Were there 10 frames, or was it like we saw, at the end of the death of the physical newspaper? Even though I know you can still get them.
Yeah,
5 frames, maybe 7 frames. You could
yeah,
only
5
go
to 7
one
frames.
line.
It was,
So you could roll out a story very slow.
Yeah, it was stuff like you had your choice of like early comics, Yellow Kid and Little Nemo, but you also had things like Flash Gordon, and you also had Buck Rogers, which had migrated to comics, and both of those were already successful IPs to a lot of kids growing up and young people. And so ironically, Superman's original idea from Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, the two young men from Cleveland, was more of a science fiction tale. Remember, science fiction was big with young people. Okay, and I know certain people out there, my good friend Script Doctor included, disagrees with me, thinking that that Superman is just science fiction. He's become more than that, but he started out as science fiction, thus the character starting on another planet. And for a character that seemed to combine the story of Moses with science fiction and a few other things that they, could throw in there. Lots of heavy social commentary. Superman did not start fighting what one would call supervillains for a while. Initially, in his first adventure, he handles a domestic dispute between a husband and his wife and a slumlord, as well as a politician. And his powers were not as they are now. In the initial adventure, he was just a guy that was able to leap really far. Not so much flying.
Hence that preamble, right? To the earliest of movies. Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, even though by that point he's full on flying.
And that's the reason why it was so important to have that in the movie Man of Steel. That's what that whole flying scene was about.
could I just say that was the best part of Man of Steel, and I really wish he had gone. No, I mean it was charming, and I really wish it had gone on a little longer. The problem is that, and this is like also the anniversary of the birth of the character that would undo Zack Snyder forever. But the part where Zod learns how to fly in about 5 minutes, and he's as good at it as Kal-El, just destroys the beginning of the movie. Like, why does he have any pain? Why does he have any suffering? And it destroys the moment of the movie. It's like, since you know you'll be okay in 15 minutes, why not call off this attack, crash land on Pitcairn Island, and then if anyone messes with you, you'll have like 8 Supermen. You're like a world power. You just have to calm down and leave the other people alone. And why change the Earth into a horrible place with those world engines? It was nicer than Krypton. I saw Krypton.
That's a good question for the man who co-created one of the hot new shows, Fallout, because he's one of the 3 people responsible for that script.
Yeah, I hope I feel like he's learned since then. Fallout, I'm up to episode 3, and I have so far enjoyed it and found that it seems like it had to like nod its head towards wokeness in episode 1, but they got away from it real quick. There was just a hint of it, and now it's been untainted for 2 episodes. But I think they made, I just really quickly, I would like to congratulate them on this one thing. They seem to have sensed out that if the show doesn't have an element of wokeness, that they won't get made at all. But if the show's really woke, no one will watch it. So in their first episode, inside the attention span of a Twitter troll, they do that thing where she wins the fight against a man. Then we see the tomboyish woman in the Brotherhood of Steel, and then we see Leslie Uggams solve all their problems. And if you were waiting for something to be woke, you would hit the roof and leave. Or if you only gave a shit about that, you would go back to Twitter and start attacking people for their other beliefs. You're like, okay, this show passed the test. She talked about something that wasn't a man, and they're strong women. And then the show just moves on and is normal. So I would like to say thank you for that front-loaded, like not so enthusiastic salute. It was just kind of like a soldier who hates his superior officer, but he has to salute the uniform, and he's like, one day there'll be better captains than him. It was a band of brothers salute.
You know what? That's the thing. The young woman who came up with the Bechdel test did it as a really more of a lark.
It's a theory.
Yeah,
all these things are theories. Heteronormative was a word used in theories for. There is a use of sociologists discussing how society works, but it's theoretical and retroactive, and we won't have any insight on what's going on now until we're all long gone. You know, we can figure out what happened. Right now, you and I, probably with demographics, if we commission people, we could probably get to the heart of the 1960 election and how it actually happened. There might be enough evidence, but that's how far looking it is. But you have to talk about it now. So people have come up with these words, and they're just scholarly words to be used in debate. A lot of them, Latinx has fallen out of favor. Even in academic circles, it's considered a destructive term. They make mistakes when they theorize. I don't know how much attention people are paying. It's like, I hear the stigmatizing term, we're going to run with it, you know? And you should really just kind of like shake that off. Demographics is the most pseudoscience of, it's the phrenology of the modern day. We're going to tell you what people do through analytics and data. You can make an equally valid conclusion in reverse. The analytics and data tells us that the biggest premiere ever was Book of Boba Fett, right? And that's just the lies, damned lies, and statistics. Rant over.
Well, thank you for the rant. Getting back to Superman. One of the things about the success of the character almost immediately was it was a character that really did appeal to kids. Kids immediately just gravitated towards that character. And almost immediately you had a radio show called The Adventures of Superman. And it is because of that radio show that you began to get certain things were added to the Superman legend. I think it was the radio show that introduced the concept of kryptonite. So that was not originally a part of the comics. The radio show also had a guy by the name of Bud Collyer, who was the voice of Superman. And he would later, the radio show started in 1940 and lasted until 1951. So by 1966, Bud Collyer is the voice of the narrator for the Further Adventures of Superman animated series that hit from Filmation. And then was added to, he's an Easter egg as one of the voices that would sometimes be used on the Superman animated series, or Superman the animated series, from the people who brought us Batman the animated series. Now, I need to look up to see if Mr. Collier's still alive, and it would be great if he were, to actually get him to make a cameo in the new Superman movie. Would be fantastic.
Do you remember the first cinematic appearance of any Superman type character, any iteration of a Superman? Because I can name it offhand. I remember seeing it.
I wasn't around when he made his first appearance, but I know who it was. It was Kirk Allen, and
the one I'm thinking of is in Batman 48, where he's like, Kent, what are you doing so far from Metropolis? It's like, story like this, the Wizard, I'm here. And that was his only line. And it's like, you yellow journalist, crime chasing lowlives. Okay, here's our press conference. But they do show him, and it's not. I don't think that guy plays him ever again. They just needed him in there.
Wow.
Pretty sure it's the 48 one because the 43 one is in L.A.
Wow. That would be a nice crossover, you know.
It's like a 1 minute long thing. As you know, those first two Batman movies are serials, so you have to sit through like 3.5 hours of it to catch that moment. But is the bad guy in the second one the Wizard? It's the first time we got a guy in a costume in a Batman movie.
I think
the first one is Imperial Japan are the bad guys.
That's the weird thing about Batman and Superman. For Superman fans, all of the different actors who have ever played Superman are on film are accepted. Batman fans do not accept the first two actors that have ever played, even though both of them have a connection to Hollywood.
I thought they were both great Batmen too.
Yeah, but
and good Bruce Waynes.
Yeah, but not every Batman fan accepts that. You can see that in a lot of the posts that people put on social media when they start counting all of the different Batman. They like to start with Adam West, and Adam West doesn't.
Sorry,
Adam West is not the first Batman. Adam West was actually
the third.
He's the third,
at least. Yeah.
And his that television
and the
show
fourth Bruce Wayne
was loosely based on how the serials had been done. And that was the main thing that lost Lyle Wagner the lead role.
And LSD.
Yeah, that too. But I mean, Lyle Wagner and Adam West were the two that it came down to. And Lyle Wagner's portrayal of Batman was based on how the serials were done. Whereas Adam West was just Adam West. And so that won him the role.
He was incomparable, and possibly to Keith's generation and my generation, he was our Batman the way the animated series Kevin Conroy was a lot like Batman to a generation, and we saw him in a different way. They had to totally rebrand Batman in '89 from I wouldn't call it the damage, but the change of direction from 67.
No, it was damage because they were about to cancel. They were about to cancel the book. This is one of the downsides about becoming popular with normies or non-fans, which is while the television show was out there and people seemed to really dig it, and you had a lot of people that just, around the world seemed to really like the television show, it had the opposite effect on the comics. The more popular the show became with Adam West, the less popular the comics were, because the comics were nothing like the show. The show is actually based on the way Batman is portrayed in the comics during the 1950s. By the time you have
But we have Yvonne Craig, so there's a little room for understanding.
Yvonne Craig was, first of all, incredibly beautiful woman, but she was a lot older than even what a lot of us fans knew. She was a lot close. Yeah, she was not a teenager. She was the mom.
That's why she was dating Garth of Axanar.
She when she got the role of Barbara Gordon, she was already married and had a son by then, which is the reason why you never got too into the whole Batgirl Robin thing on the show, because it turns out that she was actually older, and to have her and Robin hook up would have
looked weird after a little bit.
Would have looked weird.
Nerfing her age. She hadn't reached old age though. She was like older, as in like he was 22 and she was like 30. Right?
Well, she wasn't that much. No. I think she was 27 when she got the role.
By the way, Keith, thank you for my new goal to quantum leap into the body of Yvonne Craig's husband, circa 1967. We have the technology.
Yeah, that is not sounding a little creepy at all.
Well, but as I was saying, it
Michael and Sarah is on the list too. Sorry, guys.
Well, I know why you want to jump into Michael and Sarah's body, because his wife was wow. Yeah. Yep. Mr. and Sarah happened to be married to Barbara Eden. So
Mr. and Sarah is Mr. Barbara Eden to everyone else. When he was married to her and he went on the set of like other shows, like say Star Trek, do you think the male cast members lined up and it was like the Ride of the Rohirrim, like, it can be done. It can be like everyone just high-fiving him and like charging into the day's work.
What do you think it was like, for Lee Majors, after he had gotten married to a certain blonde pinup?
According to the Fall Guy lyrics, it was terrible, and he, I heard that he was like, because I'm not the primary breadwinner of this home, you must quit your job. It seems like he was a step behind where the world was. I would just be like, everyone wants my wife. The whole world can heat up the engine. I'm the one that gets to drive the car home. Fuck it, I don't care. And it looks like I'm newly rich without working. I'm just gonna hang out and be the $6 million man. But he was like, I want my wife home to cook dinner. I was like, dude, both of you have so much money. And the money being thrown around was like, I make $50,000 a week, a year or a month, whatever, and she's making 75. It's unacceptable. She needs to resign, and she did.
Yeah.
Good choices with guys, not Farrah's strong suit. Ryan O'Neal, I disavow him as an Irish American.
Well, again, this is one of those geek days of importance, and it highlights a particular character that is important within pop culture, and really just culture, really American culture, indeed, because the introduction of Superman ushers in everything else that happened thereafter. Without Superman, you definitely would not have had Captain Marvel. You definitely would not have had Batman. That much is certain. Because of the success of Superman and how quickly that success turned into something huge for National Comics that led to the creation of Batman by Bill Finger, based on an original idea by Bob Kane.
May I ask you how you? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you'd finish your point.
Yeah,
when you're done. When you're done.
Yeah.
I was going to say how important is, and what are your thoughts on the origin and rendering of the original aesthetic look of Superman? This iconic, blue, I guess yellow and red outfit, right? That's that stands for eventually truth, justice, in the American way. I don't even know when that comes out of the box, during World War II, perhaps, or the Cold War.
No, that's 1950s. 1950s.
Okay, yeah, so Cold War stuff, but still this iconic outfit. Flash Gordon, not that very different if you think about it from a 30,000-foot view. He has no cape. But you want to get into, like, where did they come up with this? Was it wrestlers? That's what I've been told.
Those ideas come from different things. You got to remember, this is the pulp era, okay? Siegel and Schuster had a lot of influences creating this character.
And he's our first superhero that we can really say, look, that's a superhero in a modern iteration. It's not.
It's a human it's a humanoid that has incredible abilities that are not due to have something that he created. You know, he's not using a jetpack. He doesn't need special tools. His powers. And all that. That's science. That's where the science fiction portion in their minds came from. I mean, we could look at it now and go, well, okay, these are superheroes, but you got to think back when Superman was first published, that term was even not really used. There was no such thing as superhero comics. They were just comics. And you had different types of heroes. You had adventure heroes. You had mystical heroes. You had heroes that just happened to either be cops or detectives, or even fantasy heroes. You know, Hercules and all that stuff, or even Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers. And so you couldn't even easily categorize what Superman was. The closest thing was a hybrid between science fiction and fantasy. And
striking to behold. Just striking to behold. People are transfixed by that. They can't. People have like it's 1933. You and I are walking out of the newspaper stand together. We see this, colorful thing, an anomaly in our world, a colorful publication, as opposed to the gray newspapers. And it's like, I got 2 cents. Do you have 2? I got 3. Like, let's buy this comic. And like, the world's not the same since then. I mean, not massively changed, but the world's not the same. And our modern myth is born.
Well, you've got also a lot of differences in so much as that Superman was different than a lot of the heroes that were on the stands. A lot of the heroes were just normal people who were disguising themselves to do good deeds. And on the high end of that, but on the high end of that, you had a certain amount of mysticism and mystical stuff combined with that. But there was none of that with this character. You know, this wasn't a character that was using magic. This is who he was. And rather than be someone who could easily rule over people, he was really this person who could turn into one of us.
Isn't it that he thinks the modern Superman absolutely thinks he's one of us until things start to change and he develops his superpowers, and then he grudgingly embraces the idea that he's different. But like, to Superman, the only part Zack Snyder got right is like, I'm from America, I'm one of you.
Well,
he
again,
let himself as an alien.
Let me at least correct you on something.
Yeah, please.
Superman, as he was portrayed in that movie, that was more of was more about the way that the script was written by Jonathan Nolan, Christopher Nolan, and David S. Goyer. Okay, now David S. Goyer is the one.
Superman and Batman, right? These are specific Superman and Batman that are established in other places, and it's Snyder's version of them. It's a sketchy Superman. No. Batman.
Snyder got this version from that. Okay, you have to understand.
Okay,
Snyder was not initially a part of this. Okay, this entire deal to create Man of Steel was something that had started before Snyder was even brought on board. That's the reason why Man of Steel is a different film, even in terms of how it looks and feels, because Snyder wasn't originally a part of the group of people who were filming the movie.
It's somewhat better than when he gets total control in BVS too. It's got moments.
It is a different movie because of who's involved with it, and because Warner Brothers at the time was wanting or trying to lure Christopher Nolan into becoming their head guy, into running the DC universe.
What did he feel like walking home from that premiere for BVS where his name is splashed all over? I mean, for Man of Steel, where his name's splashed all over the end, and he's like, "Oh my God, Zach is about the same as Michael Bay with this."
Yeah, no, he was there. He was there. Look, he was the one
I
that
can't believe it though.
he gave Zach the job. See, I tell people all the time, go and look up all of the behind the scenes features of Man of Steel. Look, Warner Brothers wanted their own superhero contingent. Now, a lot of people thought that it had a lot to do with the MCU. It didn't. This was actually their second attempt at doing something like this when their original attempts had fallen through earlier in the decade. Okay? People forget that initially DC had several films that they had put out, several characters that they had been trying to build with. And the initial idea was to just produce a series of DC films. And one of the first films, one of the ways that they were really going to try to combat what Fox was doing with the X-Men films was to, Fox would have the X-Men. So Warner Brothers thought, well, we'll just do Justice League.
But unfortunately, they didn't lay a groundwork for it. They just did Justice League. There was one movie, and then they started throwing it at us.
Well, they had George Miller, and George Miller was all set. He had his cast. He had they were going to film in Australia. They had the whole thing lined up, and then at the 11th hour, just before they were getting ready to start rolling before cameras, is when the whole thing was called off. Now, people have different ideas as to why that is. But like with Sony and the fact that they never gave up on any of their plans for Spider-Man, no matter what was going on, Warner Brothers did the same thing. Yeah, Warner Brothers did the same thing. They just continued, even though they didn't have a Justice League movie out, they continued going down the road of having their plan, which was to do, if everything had gone to plan, what you would have had was a Justice League movie. You would have had a two side
Batman
films.
only movie.
No, not yet. What you would have had was a Justice League film, along with two other DC related films that were not necessarily, one of them which was not necessarily a superhero film, but was related to DC Comics, and the other one having to do with a character that would have set up the DC Western universe, which was Jonah Hex, and then also a mystical film, which was the Constantine movie, and then
that was good.
That was
with the Keanu one, because there might be more Constantine out there.
That was different because the person who was in charge of that production wanted it to be different. You had a pseudo Kathleen Kennedy type in charge, and ironically,
it was watchable.
She was the same person in charge of the X-Men films, and that's the reason why the X-Men films got bad when she and her producers took full charge.
These are the Fantastic Four people who did every other X-Men movie after Bryan Singer starts having legal problems, where he's ultimately vindicated, by the way, everyone, just for legal purposes.
Bryan Singer did the first two films, and when they got full control of everything, that's when they came up with their greatest idea, they thought, which was X-Men 3. And the reason why it was their greatest idea was because it allowed them to have one more movie to get rid of the entire cast, to focus on the character that they thought was the most important, because they didn't see it the same way that other people did. It's that whole thing that those people that are actually in the movie business and work and do all the stuff behind the scenes do not see these characters the same way that fans do. The idea was that Wolverine was the most popular character because everybody kept talking about the character. So the idea was to separate Wolverine from everyone else, thus dumping all their contracts and dumping all of their getting rid of having to pay them, so that you could just concentrate on Hugh Jackman. Thus, X-Men Origins Wolverine.
And the X-Men movie hostile to each other, because what happens is when we start going back and forth every other movie, the Bryan Singer movies waste more and more time erasing the other movies and reestablishing themselves before going forward with that movie story. And then he would get sued again. He was ultimately vindicated. It cost us a better run of X-Men movies.
Yes.
But then it would flip back to the people that was it Fox or Sony wanted it to be, right? The Fantastic Four people on paper were qualified, but they had these crazy weird ideas, and it wasn't their property, so they're like, you want us to get rid of the payroll, fine. And then when Singer comes back, like he's like a man slipping on ice, he's just trying to write his narrative. Hello, Zax.
So what you had then was just, again, it's all part of that. But to get back to Superman, and DC, what you had in that particular instance was an attempt to establish this whole universe of characters, and not so much create something that was connected, but they were trying to basically create a bunch of characters that they could have in these singular narratives, and then eventually, since the Justice League film didn't work out, they were going to try to build their way back through and build their way back up to that. Okay. So when Nolan comes along with his reboot of the Batman mythos, the Warner Brothers executives, led by Kevin Tsujihara, just thought to themselves, well, see, here's our guy. This is the guy who's going to head up all our DC films. Just go talk to him and tell him we'll give him whatever he wants, and he can run the whole thing. And what they didn't understand is that Nolan didn't do that to run anything. He was just making a movie. He had an idea, and he realized, they realized quickly when he told them no, and continued to tell them no, that he wasn't going to do it. But after talking to them, he did have an idea for a Superman movie. So he talked to his brother, and he talked to David S. Goyer, and they sat down and mapped out the entire story and plot points for that. And since Warner Brothers wanted the movie now, he got all of his pre-production staff while they were working on the third Batman film, The Dark Knight Rises. He got all of his pre-production people working on pre-production for Man of Steel. So it was really Christopher Nolan's crew that did the initial work and a lot of the design stuff for the film. And so he had to come up with a director because he was still working on The Dark Knight Rises. And so he knew Zack Snyder, and he knew that Snyder was more of a comic book fan than he was. And so he went out and got Zack, and Zack read it, and he seemed to like it.
But did not understand it?
Well, no, here comes the twist. Warner Brothers didn't want him. They kept fighting the entire time the idea of having Zack Snyder be connected to anything they were doing. So
all I'll say is, by the time Rebel Moon 6 comes out, everyone will agree.
The difference is that when Christopher Nolan wasn't around, that's when Warner Brothers was doing a lot of hinky stuff. And to hear Henry Cavill tell it, he and Zack had a pretty good idea of what they wanted to do for Superman, or I should say for Man of Steel Part 2. But that Warner Brothers was the one that told them that they had to bring in all the rest of the characters because they were very unhappy with the lack of success for Green Lantern. And that was because the person who they had put in charge of their television universe was one of the people who helped with the script for that movie. So when you hear Ryan Reynolds go off on people, realize that the guy who was responsible for Arrow and the Arrowverse is one of the people he's making fun of. So, as well as his good buddy who he gave full control to as he kept leaving and going and doing other projects. Greg Berlanti, thank you.
Also, let's not forget some of this blame. I don't know if he's the guy you were talking about before, but let's not forget man who apparently has blackmail material on everyone, Chris Terrio, writing one horrible freaking script after another.
Yeah, Chris Terrio was actually not... Yeah, he came in after, but as far as Man of Steel goes, that's really a Christopher Nolan production as directed by Zack Snyder. And
did the relationship with Anne Hathaway distract Chris, because he goes down this particularly weird rabbit hole, and like it seems like his artistic or whatever relationship with her, whatever they were doing, like seems to explode during Interstellar, where that movie gets shortcut to the end, and then he gives her character the worst fate ever, just sort of an almost a spiteful way that almost seems to not make sense.
Yeah, I can't.
And then he makes Dunkirk, which is unwatchable unless you want to see an art film that happens to take place during war. The idea, I will make a war movie that's very, very, very long and never show the enemy. Well, that's artistic, but I don't know about interesting or good.
Well, all I do know is that Warner really, quote unquote, wanted Man of Steel. They really wanted Superman, and they really wanted Christopher Nolan to be their guy to take over all of the DC films.
So Chris is responsible for Let the Children Die, son, and all that inhumane Superman who is calloused and saw himself as an alien among us, not one of us who found out he was an alien. Because that's what I hated. Superman, it would not pass. Superman would say, "Well, who are you?" And he'd be like, "Well, I'm Clark, but this is my work. My professional name is Superman." Superman thinks of himself as Clark Kent, in my opinion. The all real Superman. Christopher Reeve does.
Well, I mean, again, you also have to look at what Nolan was doing with Batman. His Batman film was really more of a true deconstruction.
Punisher film. It was a Punisher movie.
It was a deconstruction of the character while also giving a given way to the basic idea that he used for a lot of his films, which is, what would a normal person do if you set them up with all of this stuff? If you gave them the opportunity, the same, not opportunities, but if you set them up with the same exact thing, if they happen to have been born into a rich family, their parents die, and all of the stuff that you had in a Batman comic, minus a lot of the other weird stuff, because he had no intention of going down and doing all of the weird criminals and stuff that you saw in the Batman comics. He wanted to make a Batman film or series of movies that had a little that was closer to being real and realistic than what you had in the comics. And so what he did with Superman was kind of that same thing. They used the same trick because you had the same group of people who had helped him make the Batman films, the Dark Knight films, were the ones in charge of writing Man of Steel and beginning the DC universe. So it was all really a deconstructed thing. And when Snyder and Henry Cavill tried to get Warner Brothers to look at things a particular way, Snyder realized he couldn't just change everything because Nolan was still a part of the package. Okay? Nolan is a producer, along with his wife, on Batman v Superman. And he's also a producer on Justice League.
I guess the question Martin would... Okay, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I guess Martin would want me to ask you, what would Gene Roddenberry have done with these characters?
And that's
How's
good.
That hold for on, a segue, my friend.
Hold on. Ariel Bellette. Christopher Reeve didn't think of himself as Superman until he was laying in a hospital bed, and this little thing came up inside of his bed and said, "Yep, that's my dad." Yeah,
right. But he delivered us a really, really good vision of Superman and a really, really good vision of Clark Kent. And he wasn't always right, but he fought hard for a good Superman, for a Superman that we could relate to and love.
You had really what you had was Richard Donner and Tom Mankiewicz to thank for that, because the producers of that film had no understanding. Look, I tell people all the time, if you think Nolan and really what was going on with Zack Snyder, if you think Zack Snyder and Nolan were really out of it and didn't know who Superman was, go back and look at the producers of Superman the movie. I am telling you, they had no earthly idea who that character was. based on their original concept of the character. And when you watch the making of Superman the movie and Superman 2, especially Superman 2, the theatrical version,
Right.
and then you get into Superman 3, which is them unfettered, left to their own devices. That's what they came up with.
So other movies from this team, just so people know, would be what? French Connection and Three Musketeers and Four Musketeers, going like rewinding in time.
Yeah. The producers absolutely had no idea. And you got to remember, they, even after the film premiered in Washington, D.C., they still had the gall to get Richard Donner fired as he was entering the final few weeks of production on Superman 2. Superman 2 should have been out should have been out the following year, because Superman and Superman 2 were basically filmed concurrently, or at least simultaneously, I should say, because Donner had the idea that given what the story is for Superman 2, rather than rebuild all the sets just to destroy them, he figured, well, we'll just go ahead and film everything at once and get all of the Daily Planet scenes out of the way and get all the scenes and all the various stages out of the way, so we have them already filmed. And for the most part, you just come back and, you film a few
He was
scenes.
getting in trouble at that moment, though. Wasn't he at that moment having it all come home? Because he had tried that with Three Musketeers. He made 2 movies. He didn't tell the cast.
No,
he paid them for one.
Donner was not
Was that
involved
Donner?
with. No, that's
So he's
Richard
not
Lester.
touched by that scandal.
That was Richard Lester, the guy who was on set at the invitation of producers while they were in production, and they sold it to Donner as him just being an extra set of eyes and hands in case he needed it.
Gotcha.
What was going on is that the producers were talking to Warner Brothers and telling a different story and saying, this guy is insane, he's out of control, we can't, what he's doing is not going to work, he's going to ruin this movie. So as I was saying before, they got him fired even though the response to the movie, once it came out, was incredible. They still got him out of the way so they could bring in their guy to reshoot Superman 2 so that you delayed when the movie came out. Superman 2 is actually delayed a few years.
Artistic, at least, though. Was this a financial move, or do you really feel it was? It sounds like you're saying they had artistic beliefs. That if they were wrong, they were wrong. But that I could at least say was a worthy
Here's
fight.
what you need to understand: those producers were not born in the United States. They had no idea of how important Superman was to American culture. This is what Richard Donner was saying. It's like, you guys really have to understand, because they didn't look at the script the same way we see it now. They saw it as being an opportunity to invite in famous people to make cameo appearances. They wanted Telly Savalas and other people to make cameo appearances throughout the film. They wanted Superman to do a lot of goofy stuff. They wanted more laughs. I would have loved to have seen
Telly, but yes, that would have been hilarious, but yes.
It's a whole different thing, because they didn't like what Donner was doing. Donner took these concepts and instead went the opposite way. This is about Americana.
And if you look at the
celebration
last movie
I was just going to say,
the last movie before that, The Eagle Has Landed, there's a lot of things you see in Superman, like Larry Hagman as a comic colonel. But that movie is so contemptuous and incompetent that maybe, is that the worst Michael Caine movie? I mean, there's an argument for that.
Well, I mean, again, it's
not that I want to open up that can of worms.
Having cameos from famous actors of that period, you have to understand what Donner was trying to do. He was trying to basically create an epic comic book movie, and nobody had ever had the idea to do something like that. Okay? You saw epic filmmaking with certain westerns. You saw epic filmmaking with historical dramas. Why would anybody waste their time doing that for a comic book character? And yet, that's what Donner did. Thus, the sign that he had created that said verisimilitude, which is the idea of creating a reality based on what you are creating with the story that you have right now. You create the reality and you stay within that reality for that character.
That word is banned on my channel. You can't put it into the chat. It's too
Oh,
hard
I'm
to
sorry.
spell, and I can't. No, it's too hard to spell, and I can barely understand the concept. I know it under a different term. It's continuity.
Well, continuity of
It's a
of a
strong
way, but yeah,
relationship.
yeah. But it's like he wanted to create he wanted you to look at it this way on set. He told everybody, look, Superman is real. That's what we're doing. We are going under the premise that this is a real person. So we are doing everything in our power to make the public and the audience believe that this is real. And thus the whole "you will believe a man can fly." That and the fact that they had figured out how they were going to do that. That was the big question mark while they were shooting the movie. And up until the final couple of weeks, I don't even think really Donner had no idea if the flying scenes would work. So he
The R.
put his
Kelly jokes write themselves, but we're going to stay away from those.
he poured everything he could though into all of the non-flying scenes. He knew that working with the actors and at getting them to take the material as seriously as he was would be the key to unlocking what this movie could be and finding all of these great actors to be in this film rather than turning it into a lark, getting everyone to actually act their asses off.
Before
And yeah,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Before we vacate Superman, because I think there's some desire from our producer we talk about Gene.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
At what point does Superman's when in our history from the time he starts till now, would you say his flag flew highest, so to speak? When was his flag flying at its highest point? You know, best Superman we ever had, best year for Superman, whatever, however you want to put
that's
it.
a hard question. You know what?
You could say it's been plateaued, flying at the top of the Everest of superheroes since day one, if you want. I mean,
I would only because to say this. You've had a lot of people working behind the scenes to get this character up and running in Hollywood. And the first time I heard about this happening, and so far it's the only time I remember this happening. There was a man who worked for DC worked for National Comics, and he retired or left his job, went out to Hollywood and started working on various things that would eventually lead to the Adventures of Superman television series. You know, I'd never heard of any person taking time off or leaving their job in order to help do something within the area that they were not really familiar with. And when you look at what DC ended up doing when they got purchased by Warner Brothers versus what Marvel has done since they were purchased by Disney, you have two different ways of working. And mainly because, and again, as much as I may make fun of the guy or deride the guy, the one thing I got to tip my cap to for Bob Iger is this. In not treating Marvel like Disney owned everything and wanted them to kowtow to how they did things, in allowing each company that they owned to operate in a way that they saw fit, allowed Marvel to basically do what Marvel Studios had originally been created for, which is Marvel Studios was created to bring attention to the Marvel characters and thus help everything, Marvel merchandising, Marvel television, and even Marvel comics become more popular. That was really the idea behind Marvel Studios. That isn't what it is now because Kevin Feige has altered that and has now made Marvel in service of Marvel Studios so that everything else plays in service to how you make the movies rather than what Marvel Studios was originally to have been. DC's problem is not a DC problem. It was a Warner Brothers problem. In 1975, 75, 76, Warner Brothers bought DC Comics. DC then became a division of this huge, uh, 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 massive entertainment company. As such, they had absolutely no control over anything. Technically, if you really wanted to get down to it, DC Comics, as everybody knew them prior to that, stopped existing. Just literally stopped. Every DC Comics related movie, I don't care what it is, was not made by DC Comics. It was made by Warner Brothers. DC has no standing, no voice, no authority if anyone from Warner's wanted to do something with any character. Doesn't matter what it is. So every TV show, every movie you've seen is wholly dependent upon a division of Warner Brothers that was responsible for making it. If it's television, it's the head of Warner Television. If it's animation, it's the head of Warner Animation. If it's film, it's the head of Warner Film. At no point in anything has DC Comics had anything to do with anything that's ever been done. Ever. And that's the difference of the reason why Marvel has been successful and DC hasn't. Because DC's not doing anything. If DC were put up and set up the same way that Marvel Studios was, there'd be a bit of a difference. The quality of what is produced would be different. But there is absolutely no way any company, because really the outlier really is Disney in this particular case, because no other company does that. Fox never allowed Marvel to tell them anything. They allowed them on the first movie. They kind of faked being friends. But it is what happened during the production of X-Men 2 that really led to one of the reasons why Marvel Studios was created, because they found themselves shut out, basically. And Ike Perlmutter didn't like that, thus leading to what I like to call the Keith rule on the show yesterday. You never, ever want to piss off a billionaire. Ever. And Ike Perlmutter took that personally. So he took away all of the toy merchandising support for X-Men. So you only had toys and tie-in stuff and even advertising for the first two X-Men films. No support for anything after that. And after what happened at Sony, that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. And Ike Perlmutter started a plan with the help of Avi Arad to create Marvel Studios. Avi just somehow thought he was going to be the guy to run Marvel Studios. And basically, Ike Perlmutter had a different idea. And the gentleman who actually set everything up, he also thought he was going to be allowed to run Marvel Studios, and they let him. They told him no, so he quit. And they went out and got Kevin Feige.
You know, I'm just reading our producer's mind, and I'm thinking to myself, where is all their forbearance when it comes to Star Trek on a normal day? Usually it's like, well, in the news today, Gina Carano. You know, a Star Wars show, a Star Trek show with Gina Carano is very interesting. What would you think of Captain Carano? And you know what? It reminds me of the accident, and we would just be off to the races.
Well, I will get right on that. You know, look, to end all of this stuff with Superman, I will say this. It is hard coming up with any kind of an IP that is iconic, let alone something that is known worldwide. But that's exactly what Superman is. And when you really think about it, you know, what Siegel and Schuster were able to do was bring the best of what they knew and combine that with some elements that they were familiar with. In their case, combining it with Doc Savage and the Phantom, and then a little bit of science fiction that they really loved, and a few attributes that they really admired from certain people, and you got this hero. Much the same way that you had a veteran of World War II, former airline pilot, former motorcycle cop who had decided to take an opportunity to take a chance and live his dream in writing television.
That's right. And that man's name was
Eugene Wesley Roddenberry.
A genius who would bring us into a better and more optimistic view of the future. A man who would reinvent episodic television in a way we hadn't seen before, taking the familiar with the sublime and making the absolutely captivating world of Star Trek.
Yes.
Among
How's
other
that for an
things.
intro?
Among a numerous other things. Man, his
Yes.
credits are
That's
oof.
we have an incredibly huge and vast Final Frontier and other stuff.
Guys,
Yeah.
it's the time of the show. So when we get back, we are gonna unleash your knowledge on Roddenberry. See you after the ad.
Meet the Seattle Vigilante. Like so many comic heroes, this warrior hides his identity. But his identity isn't the only secret he has to keep. After grievous wounds received during combat, Tier 1 operator John Russell begins to recover and comes to terms with his new reality of being an amputee. And as he learns how to use his new prosthetic limb, he finds himself caught up in the bureaucratic red tape that too many wounded veterans experience, the exhausting medboard process. Out of sheer frustration, John takes it out on the criminal scum of the city. But when reality kicks in, John realizes he started something that's having an impact on the greater world around him, and thus has to reevaluate his motives. And moreover, just how far is John willing to go to finish this war he's declared against the criminals in Seattle? And will he even survive? From the creator of IDW's award-winning graphic novel Code Word Geronimo comes a new story about a different kind of warrior, Vindicated Inc., the first of its kind disabled veteran action hero comic. The Vindicated Inc. graphic novel crowdfunding campaign on fundmycomic.com is provided in the description of this video. We hope you become a contributor. Please share this link. Thank you.
Ooh, and
That sounds like
seriously,
a real good story.
that's what I was gonna say. It's amazing. First of all, thank you to everyone who has contributed. But still, if you would like to get in on this, now is a good time. Vindicated.
An American comic book by an American comic creator about American soldiers. Don't cancel your manga. Don't stop reading that. But hey, here's an American product that you can get behind and a story that I endorse. I know it's going to be good. I can't imagine it would be anything but really good.
Well, let's get right on into this. Look, some time back, there is the launch of what they like to call the Roddenberry Archive. A company by the name of Otoy gets together and starts creating in association with the Roddenberry estate to create an immersive and interactive 360 recreations of the iconic Starship Enterprise bridge across time and space, with testimonials from Star Trek luminaries to explore the evolution and legacy of the Star Trek franchise with holographic accuracy and historical detail. As a Star Trek fan myself, I find myself just blown away, because this is something that every fan can really get into. Not everyone can travel to see all of the recreations, the various recreations of the bridge of the Enterprise. We can't get to all of the places where they actually filmed, but what we can do is access uh, uh, various things online and get an opportunity to at least see and experience a few things. And part of the reason why we have our good friend here today. Oh, and it's Gerry. Hello, Gerry.
Yes, I'm here to sing the song, What's the Buzz? Tell me what's happening.
Oh, Hefe.
So, what are we talking about, guys? I've been dealing with stress all morning because my dear friend Fahim was asking me questions I'm not at liberty to answer.
Oh.
And I'm like, I can't answer those questions because I might get fired. No, he was messaging me about the new book cover I did. And, I don't want to slip it out too much, but there's a special edition of his book coming out with brand new art by this guy.
Really?
Yeah. And he loves it. He was very excited about the new cover I did. I can't show the cover, but I can at least say that I have done it.
Well, we are talking about the Roddenberry archive.
Oh, because that's where true Star Trek is at right now.
Yes.
Rod Roddenberry, the estate, are making sure that things are done right there. Yes. They have no control over what's going on with CBS, Viacom, Paramount.
You should speak out against it, though.
Well, he kind of has in his own way because he is legally not allowed to say very much. You got to understand that. I mean,
at this point,
he has limitations.
I would lose my mind if I was him. That must be horrible. I pity Rod Roddenberry for that.
Well, it took him a long time to really fully understand what his dad was doing. Mm-hmm. And then to see his father's work bastardized the way that they've done it over the last decade is just, it has to be infuriating to him, but he's keeping his composure for legal reasons. Okay. And eventually we're going to see something come out of this. It'll be different.
If he can somehow come out of this looking like Christopher Tolkien, I'd be shocked because he really took a beating from these shows. He really, really did. His name's on all of them.
Because his name's on all of them. Yep.
But here's the thing. It was a pre-existing situation. The original project, as was presented to him...
There you go. What he's about to talk about right here.
Was different than what CBS and really Alex Kurtzman ended up giving. The original concept for this show, or
it was his old writing partner. Just mention this. His writing partner was the one that was heading this up.
Actually, no. This was Brian Fuller. It's Brian. Fuller.
Brian Fuller.
This is my other twin brother, Robert Meyer Burnett's. This is the guy he knows. Brian Fuller, whose name is on at least STD.
Because his name is on Star Trek Discovery too, but he had no say in what they did.
That's right. He was originally hired to create a brand new Star Trek program. He was hired by CBS to do this. Well, Fuller was coming off of having created a bunch of other shows and had garnered a nice fan base. Part of the reason why they asked him to do that was he actually got his big break working on Star Trek The Next Generation. So he knew Roddenberry when Roddenberry was still working on Next Generation. And he got a chance to get to know him, to work on a show like that actually allowed him to get his Writers Guild membership. So he loved Star Trek. He watched all episodes of the original series and then worked on Next Gen. So now as a showrunner and writer is an opportunity that really, when you think about it, every Star Trek fan would love to create their own Star Trek series. So this guy got a chance to do that. He writes the Bible. He puts together all the characters. He hires, he hired all of the writers. He even got the director of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan to come aboard as he got him to contribute.
They're
And
tracking in the
so,
right direction. By the way, though, Orsi really was involved in every project that Kurtzman did that worked out. It's when
yeah,
Orsi gets thrown out of Kurtzman's orbit. Well, I call it the white dwarf star phase of Kurtzman. He just
yes,
he expands beyond what he's supposed to be, and his gravity is too deep for what he's supposed to be, and he's just literally out of his depth in every way.
in
And
every
Robert
way.
Orsi just walks away from him. And I think Hawaii 5-0 that aired against Monday Night Football with low expectations of ratings was the last thing they did together. And you can watch that, and it's not memorable
Well,
or
their
good or Hawaii 5-0 in a lot of ways.
their relationship has already started to deteriorate before that. I mean, they did not even really a television show that they're both associated with, Fringe. In actuality, it was actually two other people who had
Which I
actually
finally, by
produced.
the way, just started watching.
What do you think so far?
Pretty damn good so far.
The visual effects, just as a side note, the visual effects for the pilot episode, the thing with the bus and everything, that was all done in Kansas City. And the main effects house was the main effects for that episode was done in Kansas City. That guy ended up contributing a lot more effects throughout the course of the show. But love Fringe.
Proof if you're a good effects guy in Missouri and actually fulfill your contracts, you get rehired.
Yes.
I'm not saying any names, but you know who I'm talking about.
But the thing about the Roddenberry archive, let's circle back around to that, is that it is the one haven that you can go to if you are a Star Trek fan and you want to look in a way inside the mind and legacy of Gene Roddenberry. And it's a unique way to do it. So Teague, I told you before we started the show, I mean, you were starting to get a look at some of this stuff. So why don't you go ahead and access that right now? Because we're getting some live reactions from somebody who has never seen this before and never experienced
Spock
it.
returning to I forgot the name of the planet.
Viridian 3.
Viridian 3, yeah.
Oh.
To visit Kirk's grave is one of the most monumental moments. And the way that they were able to use a mixture of CG and actual makeup to recreate Leonard Nimoy is just mind-boggling. Older and younger Leonard Nimoy. Just, it was beautiful. And they also brought back what is her name? She was the ensign in the
the character.
Pilot.
Yeah,
The unused
she's the
pilot.
Rand? Gracie Whitney?
No. She was the original Captain Yeoman from.
I know who you mean.
Brought her back with a new actress that just nailed it.
Yeah, you ought to really look at that because it's loosely based on a comic book story from DC Comics, and
because Spock had more of a relationship
great.
with her.
I'm watching it right now. This is some really great Star Trek.
You can also
material
visit the bridge. On
Yeah,
that website.
it's the
It's the 3D bridge.
OTOY's got most of it, right?
Yeah, Otoy is the name of the
Otoy has the
company.
most of it. Here,
And-
a sense of wonder, a sense of satisfaction. I need to see more of this, right? I only have seen minutes of it, but it's like all of a sudden, it's like in the back of my closet, I found like a whole bunch of like Gene Roddenberry novels that I bought and forgot about. That's the feeling I'm going through right now.
Yes.
A feeling of wonderment. If it could be captured in music, it's the Voyager theme is playing right now as I watch this, especially the part where they fly over the ice ring of the planet and the song breaks into sheer wonderment. I'm in wonder, and I'm so happy that I have this. Thank you for telling me about it.
First of all, it is my pleasure to do this for any Star Trek fan that doesn't know about this. It is a place to go. It is a haven, and it's really meant to give you more of an insight as to who Roddenberry was, but it's also a way of extending his legacy a little bit. You know, it's easy to get mad about the current version of Star Trek that we're getting from certain people, but it's, I think, better
No
to hear.
kidding.
I think it's better to learn and understand everything about this really from the guy who created it. You know, again, as much as a certain showrunner on Strange New Worlds may think of themselves as being equal to what Roddenberry and the writers behind him were able to do. First and foremost, I don't care if you've got an Academy Award, dude. You're an idiot. You're playing in someone else's sandbox. And Strange New Worlds had the potential of being really good Star Trek, but it is not, because you are willingly contradicting what they've done in terms of story. And when you contradict Roddenberry himself, then I'm going to go with Roddenberry and Gene L. Kuhn and all those writers over Strange New Worlds and their people. I'm sorry.
Right.
Easy.
You've been too much of a jerk, and you've subverted the vision of Star Trek. And Tom Connors and Andre made up the concept of 25% different to kind of cover what it is. You know what? Does anyone argue it's 125% different anti-Star Trek BS now? It's not Star Trek at all. I'm sorry.
Well,
it is anti-Star Trek.
Let me grab my hypo spray over here with the Valium in it.
It's just that but there's more to it. And this is what I was going to try to get into today. There is more than just the Star Trek stuff there. According to an article from Screen Rant, 7 years before creating Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry wanted to create a TV show about Sam Houston. Here's his pitch from the Roddenberry Archives. So, the Roddenberry Archives isn't just Star Trek. It's allowed to include really a lot of his creative input. It gives us an opportunity to see things like his Sam Houston pilot, which, again, when you look at the book Star Trek, the making of Star Trek that he put out, and stuff like this, it's really, I think, for me, a teachable thing. It teaches you, it's how I learned how television works, how to create and pitch an idea, how to put together a Bible for a television series. I learned all that in high school because of Gene Roddenberry and Stephen Winfield, who put together the book, The Making of Star Trek. You learn what it was like to get the sets built. I will say personally, as much as I loved that book, it is also one of the driest books I've ever read. So it was a true slog, but I got through it. But upon completing it, I had a whole different respect for Star Trek and what it took to actually film that series. And it made me want to go out and read other books about how everything was put together, which I found David Gerald's books, the 2 books that he wrote about working on the Star Trek series. And then I started reading biographies of all the different actors, and eventually found the book Inside Star Trek when it came out, and pretty much capped off everything that I learned about what it was like to actually create that television series and get all of the different perspectives of writers and actors on that show. And so that forms my opinion about Star Trek, which is this. This was a show that was meant to be different than a lot of other television shows of that time. Mainly because Roddenberry went out and got some of the biggest names out there to write for the show. And many of these people either became some of the biggest names within the genre of science fiction, some of them to the point where they were awarded the title of Grand Master within the realm of science fiction, which is not a title that is easily handed out to just people who are just writing things or just passing through. But many of them were also people who were not only just some of the best science fiction writers, they were also some of the best television writers, and some of them had actually worked on Twilight Zone. And if you can basically work on a show like Twilight Zone with Rod Serling, you're definitely top tier writing. And that's really what it was. It was an opportunity to create science fiction for the first time as entertainment on television versus a show like Lost
intelligently
in Space. Yes,
produced.
Intelligent science fiction.
Because they had done science fiction before, but it was always child level stuff.
Yeah, it was always sci-fi level.
Rocket
That's what I call
Ranger
it.
kind of crap.
Yeah, yeah. And that's really what Lost in Space was. It was adventure science fiction, family and
Didn't
kids.
start out that way.
Yes, it didn't.
First season was a little more serious.
Mm-hmm. But it was changed. And
Well, once Dr. Smith didn't die, it was kind of doomed, I say. Doomed.
It was that second composer I wonder whatever happened to the second composer they brought on for that show, who sort of changed the character of the music.
Well, let me also.
Are you talking about John Williams? Or as he was known then,
Johnny Williams. Yeah,
yep.
Johnny Williams.
Here, and he did two themes. He did two separate themes, and ironically, the one that was only for one season is the one most remembered, even though I remember both lovingly.
Yes.
I remember the one with the it was very, very, very John Williams. It starts out with like a flourish of horns.
And that's season 3. Season 1 and 2, different theme. And it was a little more jaunty. And I still love that theme too. But the one that everybody remembers, that everybody uses when they do the reboots, they use that second or the third season theme.
Yeah.
With the 3-second countdown. 3, 2, 1.
Well, here's the thing. 7 years before creating Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry pitched a TV series about Sam Houston, and his first ever pitch document is explored by the Roddenberry podcast, Genealogy. Before producing Star Trek's first unaired pilot, The Cage, which he pitched in 1964, and Star Trek, the original series, which premiered in 1966, Gene Roddenberry spent the mid to late 1950s as a successful TV writer, while still working as an LAPD police sergeant. Roddenberry wrote scripts for Highway Patrol and Mr. District Attorney under his pseudonym Robert Wesley, and 10 episodes of the West Point Story. In 1957, Gene
Wesley
Roddenberry
was his middle name, by the way, if you didn't know.
1957, Roddenberry pitched The Man from Texas, a historical-based TV series about Sam Houston. Genealogy, a Roddenberry podcast hosted by Earl Green and Norman C. Lau, uncovered and explored The Man from Texas, the earliest TV pitch by Gene Roddenberry that there are records of in the Roddenberry archives. It's a fascinating glimpse at Roddenberry's desire to oversee his own TV series about an American icon whose life was unbelievably true story. You can listen to the episode of Genealogy online, and I will try to get you a link so that those of you following our show today can also find yourself there. Let's see. But that's not the only thing, though, within the Roddenberry archives. You're going to see a lot of other stuff, like I think they have the original ideas that gave birth to the show, to the TV shows Andromeda and also Earth Final Conflict. 2 shows that Rod Roddenberry has had some experience with. And if you want a very interesting answer about what he actually thought about those shows, I would talk to Rod. But you're going to get some interesting answers from Rod on those. Let's see. Here's a note at the bottom of the story saying that the Genealogy host likened Gene Roddenberry's plan for The Man from Texas to George Lucas's The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. Wow. Gene Roddenberry also delved into the history of Sam Houston, and he envisioned a historical epic about Houston's life that could run for 36 episodes a season and even 10 times that. Star Trek, the original series, also dipped into history with the crew of the Starship Enterprise time traveling to the past, meeting historical figures, or even beings from mythology like the Greek god Apollo, Michael Forrest. Roddenberry's ambitious ideas for The Man from Texas sound more like a modern serialized TV series, foreshadowing what would come decades later with shows like Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And I'll just leave it at that because the writer had to put that other show in there. STD, as I'll call it. Further, Gene Roddenberry's character sketch for Sam Houston's chief Army scout in The Man from Texas, Deaf Smith, contained potential elements of Mr. Spock, Leonard Nimoy. In the role of Sam Houston's sidekick in the TV series, Smith could be seen as serving a similar function as Captain Kirk's Vulcan first officer in Star Trek. The Man from Texas was never made, and the Lieutenant, 1963 to 1964, predated Star Trek as the first TV series created by Gene Roddenberry. But Genealogy offers a fascinating glimpse at Roddenberry's unrealized vision for let's see.
What?
First series created by Gene Roddenberry, but Genealogy offers a fascinating glimpse at Roddenberry's unrealized vision for an ambitious TV series about Sam Houston. So that's the end of the article. But this looks amazing. But as again, I had said before, the Roddenberry archive is really meant to be a way of getting into and behind the scenes, getting into the mind of Gene Roddenberry, and also taking a nice overview look at what he was doing, what he was into, and what his thoughts were, and some of his unrealized ideas and dreams. And so I think a lot of the TV pilots that he eventually came out with, especially some of the work that he did with Gene L. Coon post Star Trek, are also a part of what they're doing with this. And I think you can also find a lot of the material that went into both the Star Trek movie that they had planned, Planet of the Titans, as well as Star Trek Phase 2. So there you go, Teague. I have basically, you now have access to something that a lot of Star Trek fans really could, and fans really of Gene Roddenberry and fans of the creative process can get into and experience and learn from. This is one of those things that I just find myself completely bowled over by. And
I'm astonished when they took over and destroyed Memory Alpha, like the Borg take over and destroy things. I thought we'd lost so much, and we did. But this, okay, we got this one website. This is a little bit of hope. This was great to see. Thank you.
Yeah. And you know what? To really put a fine point on everything, because I'm that guy. There are interviews at the Roddenberry archive. There's an interview with the director of the first pilot that they had. Fascinating interview. And again, I'm not trying to, I really do mean that. It's interesting to hear the thoughts of the director. And I think there's also an interview with William Shatner. I know they've interviewed pretty much all the living cast members from the show. And of course, the story that they're trying to tell. And ultimately, they do talk about this. They are going to attempt to at least bring to life some of the either stories and or concepts from either the books, from both the books and from the animated series. I mean, they're going to try to find a way of bringing it all to life. And as of right now, you could tour the Bridge of the Enterprise, as well as, let's see, the 3 versions of the Enterprise Bridge is what it is. You could tour the Bridge of the Enterprise as it was under Captain Pike, Captain Kirk, and then also under Captain Kirk for the animated series brought to life. I mean, this is deep nerd stuff. This is just truly deep, deep, deep nerd stuff. And then I think they even have, they started doing a mock-up of the bridge that they had designed for Star Trek Phase 2. So this is really meant to just completely just be a total resource for all of you fans of Gene Roddenberry's work out there. Because I think once, look, in my opinion, they're never really going to be done with all the Star Trek stuff. But it would be interesting to see what else they decide to bring to life. I mean,
I just hope they eventually put all this crap into a vault and away from everybody, so it doesn't taint anything else.
Yeah,
it does need to be protected and guarded jealously because of what's happened to Gene's other work. It has to be jealously guarded by us, the fans.
Well, I'm so against burning of books and stuff like that. So yeah, it's like, just put it away someplace where we don't have to look at it anymore.
Well, I'm just, it's just amazing to see all of this, and I'm sure it's not easy in some respects for his son, but it allows him to get a little closer to his dad, which is a good thing. And again, it just allows you to go someplace that really a lot of people never thought they would go, which is to get inside the mind of Gene Roddenberry. And I would like to think that on some level that it could be kind of helpful to anyone wanting to do anything within the future of anything Star Trek related, because it should be a resource that allows you to understand exactly what Star Trek is. I just think that I really can't understand how anybody could just get it so wrong the way Kurtzman Trek has. I mean, I know we've told our jokes and everything, but it is really just amazing to me how
the man
wrong.
has no. Yeah, it seems to me that this man has led his entire life on some sort of communist commune. I consider his shows communist propaganda. That's my opinion. But I consider it that. It's subversive and hateful to Star Trek. It's subversive and hateful to individuality. It's subversive and hateful to teamwork. And they play these two things for laughs. We have seen them wild hunch their way through 5 seasons of Star Trek Discovery, where someone actually does present a reasoned course of action that sounds a little Star Trek-y, and then Mikey Spock just like smugly does the opposite, and it just works out because her hunch is always right. I mean, at this point, just listen to whatever she says, and the story will be over in half the time. But no, people still have to argue.
Well, listen,
you know, they have weaponized teamwork. They have made teamwork seem impossible. The way people talk back to that captain on Strange New Worlds is despicable. It's despicable.
Yeah. But then again, that's not really the Enterprise, because that Enterprise is actually much larger than the real Enterprise itself.
You've heard of the mirror universe
of sorts, yeah.
Well, you've heard of the mirror universe. That is the toilet universe.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it's going to fight the other captain it's going to fight is the Tidy Bowl man. He'll be out there in space with like a fucking 9mm capping off shots at the Enterprise, and he'll probably mess it up. They'll probably get a couple of the men on board.
Wow. You know what? Here, I got something.
You liked that one, didn't you, Keith?
It's terrible, predictable satire now. It really is. It's indistinguishable.
Let me share something here, because this is something new.
Everybody better back up.
Dropped, and here we go. What do you think?
Odo. Nice.
That is the latest one from XO6.
But he does a shapeshift.
Oh, yes, he does.
Actually, they anticipated that reaction. They've actually got something here.
Show it to him. Show it to him.
Yes, it's show and
Let's
tell
see it.
for a reason. So here you go. It's right here.
Liquid form, okay.
With his
Pot, yeah.
Bucket.
oh,
And but does he shapeshift into anything? Is there like
oh
other
does
faces?
he? Yeah, not yet.
You buy the other collectibles for that. Yeah, you buy you buy Cisco, and you're just like, this is Odo looking like Cisco.
No. It shapes you. It shapeshifts you into a poorer man. Look at that.
Well, that's
Look
supposed to be
at that hype at that price tag, man.
true. It look, that is really supposed to be his natural form, or at least becoming his natural form, because yeah. But for the price that they are charging, wow.
Keith, do you think that Odo is like the Kool-Aid guy and his internal organs just sort of float around arbitrarily? Like, is that how that works?
I don't know, but for that amount of money,
It doesn't. See. Oh no, man! This figure is absolutely gorgeous, but no one can beat the Savick one.
the Savick one just
The
was
likeness
amazing.
is
That was just freaking amazing. I can't even begin to tell you. Wow, just wow. This is just some incredible detail. But again, that's what it is. That price is what it is, and I can't
That's
justify
great.
that. I can't justify it, man.
I too have a major Kira collectible. However, mine is inflatable. Isn't that right, baby? You know Akira. Yeah, you forget it. Don't let Fennec Burrell. No, we're not taking any calls from them.
I had the pleasure of meeting her at that Star Trek con here in town.
Really?
Mm.
Here you go, buddy.
Savick. Oh, good. It's the Kirstie Alley one, not the other one.
yes.
Robin Lee Curtis or the Savick the less? I don't know.
The dog likeness is
It's
awesome.
It's that splash of Romulan that makes her so freaking hot.
And she's even lifting the left eyebrow.
Yes. Wow. Wow, just the detail alone.
I thought it was interesting that in Star Trek 6 they created a whole new character because they didn't want Savick to be the
Traitor.
bad guy.
Yeah, I agree.
Rightly so. The window had closed to use that aspect of the story, and we had all. She had done too much to save Spock. She had done too much to try to reform David. She had been too in the thick of it for the most important things that ever happened, the Genesis device. I didn't want a villain Savick. I was fine with Kim Cattrall being the bad girl.
Yeah.
Wow.
It worked.
Gracie Law was a good villain.
Yes. Kim Cattrall did very good. And then of course, I still think these figures just completely rock.
You know, just thinking quickly, it's the reverse of Bonds, really. Female leads in Star Trek in a smaller role. It's been good for the person most times. The woman from Star Trek 4, she ends up getting a series. It didn't work out for the woman in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, but Savick won. Look at the success, and I'm sure Robin Curtis did like enough TV movies and soap operas to get by too.
It's pretty good, Shatner, but not perfect. Got some problems on the left side of the face.
Oh, that's his evil psyche taking a hold.
That was odd. Inquisitor was cast as Pamela Voorhees. She's barely in the reboot.
And
I'm in the middle
course,
of talking to Tom right now for Midnight's Edge.
Oh, okay.
That's
Did
why
anyone
I'm
see the story,
distracted.
I'm sorry. Did anyone see the story in Giant Freaking Robot yesterday, where they said that William Shatner was set to return as Captain Kirk, Mirror Universe Kirk in Enterprise?
They just make up shit, dude.
I think it's bullshit too. Yeah, my response was, seriously?
I've made jokes about how for years that
And that
Giant
Kirk would
Freaking
seem to be
Robot
dead.
and We Got This Covered have a cork board with post-it
Yeah.
notes over made up titles, and they just throw darts to see which
Mirror
one they're going
Kirk
to go
should be
with that
dead.
week.
He could not have survived the events of the episode we saw him in. Spock had him.
Was that Kang? That is Kang.
No, that's Christopher Lloyd.
Krug.
Well, that's what Krug. I'm sorry, Krug. Don't fucking correct me. Understand me like Keith does. He knew what I meant. Fucking Martin.
That is very well done.
It is really good. I like the cheats. Yeah, it still sounds
Sorry, I
like
had to do
Christopher
my
Lloyd.
thing.
It's. I've always chuckled when he's talking about the Genesis device and some of the things he says in the film. It's just like all I could see is like this is an alternate universe for Back to the Future.
I found him to be, that sequence works though. Like, it was supposed to be funny, and it is, and at the same time the Klingons still get a little scarier and more arbitrary and kooky. It was great.
They commandeer his ship, his vehicle, and use it as a time machine. So
it saves every one of us. Yeah, that's right. He has a time machine.
a time machine that can only travel through time if moving.
This planet is exploding around us. Yes, accelerating, isn't it? Great line.
That's a fun movie. And
I love Star Trek 3. I don't believe that the odd movie curse exists. I think the odd movies are just as good as some of the other ones. They're merely different. With all the heavy lifting that Star Trek 3 had to do, leaning into the TV show, it's a lot like a mega-sized episode, and so is Star Trek 5. The most like the TV show of any of the movies is Star Trek 5.
Yeah, I will say this about Christopher Lloyd. It's not his only venture into being a villain. Earlier in his career, he played Butch Cavendish in the Lone Ranger film.
And
Back in
Meyer
the 70s.
Lansky in 8 Men Out.
He played Meyer Lansky?
Or his enforcer. It wasn't clear. He sat behind the pitcher's. He told the pitcher, Eddie Seacott, you're not going to win today. And he was like, well, I'm going to go out there and pitch my best. And then, like, the two, like, murderers, like, sit down behind his wife. And right before that, we have Lloyd sort of setting it up. Yeah, he would be the same character that's kind of in Great Gatsby. He's orchestrating the fix. And in real life, I believe it was Lansky. So whatever they call him in the movie, he's Lansky or Lansky's enforcer or orchestrator.
That is so wild. Yeah, it seemed like he got juicier roles before he played Reverend Jim.
This was a small but pivotal role, and it was about how he really just looked like he would do, he was able to affect a pretty intimidating and evil milieu. He was a professional who, delivered a lot of different emotions.
Hey, look who's in the chat.
And then there was the
Is that a made-for-TV movie? Because I'm not finding it.
8 Men Out? No, Charlie Sheen is in it. John Cusack is in it. Nancy Travis is in it. It's the story of the 1919 World Series.
What year did that come out?
It's a great movie. About 1988. It's John Sayles from
There, I
Brother
found
from
it.
Another
I found
Planet.
it.
Look at that cast.
Oh, yeah. Look at that. The Black Sox scandal. Yeah. We just talked about this the other day.
It's a really, really great movie.
And somebody says, what was the Black Sox? I said, well, they were the Red Sox until they got dirty.
White Sox, the White Sox.
Oh, my.
Or they were the White Sox until they got dirty.
And they lost to, I believe it is, was it the Cubs? That one I'm less sure of. But, hey,
he plays Bill Burns in it. He plays.
You know how much money I lost on that?
Okay, he plays Bill Burns. He's one of the ball players. Was an American baseball player who played as a pitcher in Major League Baseball for 5 different teams, 1908 to 1912. He earned his nickname for his noticeable lack of intensity in the mound.
That's not Christopher Lloyd's role, though.
That's what it says.
That he's a gangster. Maybe he had been involved with baseball, and that's how he connects the gangsters.
Clifton
to the
James
baseball people
plays Comiskey in it. Famous for
and Frazier's dad is the coach who tries to steer the team out of the rut. And is it DB Sweeney? He's like warming him up for the game. He's like, "Don't worry, kid, you'll be fine. I remember my first game." And he's like,
"Yeah, he plays Shoeless Joe."
You beat Cy Young. It was great. That's a great movie. You would never figure it's the brother from Another Planet guy, but I like that movie too, actually.
Yeah, it's one of Sale's best films.
Can someone let him make? Why couldn't he have made more movies? People were like, nope, 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 and like what we've got is real good.
He's a thrifty guy, clever, but he's not always Johnny on the spot with his writing, and that's the problem with John Sayles. Is he got a little full of himself, and I think that came about when he started hanging out with all the celebrated guys that considered themselves too smart for their own good and became a member of the Sons of Lee Marvin. Which, if you don't know that story, it's a whole thing by itself. The actual son of Lee Marvin,
I've seen that movie,
fought legally to stop them from
Jim
calling
Jarmusch
themselves
is
that.
in with it.
Jim Jarmusch, all of them, yeah. But also, what's that singer's name? The fuck is that singer's? Tom Waits. And I like Jim Jarmusch too. But again, it depends on the film.
Well, I'm telling you, it's just, yeah.
All right, just to let you know, Martin, Tom is going to try to be there Saturday, but if something comes up and he can't make it, we should pre-plan for another film. So,
which one?
I would say the next week's show, and just have that one on the back burner just in case Tom can't make it. No, that is not the one I have for next week. I thought I moved that one up.
Well, listen, let me just go ahead and get set to wrap things up. Wait a minute. Who is this? How did I miss this?
I don't know. I even told you. Nobody listened.
I'm sorry.
Hey, your brother was on. Hey.
Well, little bro. Wow. Okay. Well,
I wouldn't mind Strange Brew being bumped up.
Let me go ahead and say thanks to everybody for hanging out today with us as Teague and I went deep into the whole Superman Day ceremony.
No grief.
And history.
Deep penetration there.
But also, we did get the Roddenberry archive. And as you all heard, this was Teague's first time with that. So,
of all the internet archives I've seen in all my voyages, that one was the most human.
Hey, G. Yeah. You keep on about that. I'm gonna catch up with you. You can guarantee that I will catch up to you.
But you're the older brother. How can you catch up? You're already ahead.
I am ahead, but I mean physically.
I'm the older brother. I deserve respect, Michael.
I will see him again.
James, just be thankful that you're not Kevin, because I think Keith ate a little bit of him in the womb.
What?
Whoa.
That's why he's so small.
You know what? Gerry can say that because like James, he's also the youngest to his family. So I totally get it.
You were born first, I know.
Born best. But that's okay. I'm not I just like to say that it was pretty much proven that they probably should have just stopped after me, but they had to go through with the rest of the experiment and see if they could do it again. Anyway, no, seriously, it's great having you. It's great having you in the audience, though, G. Thanks, man. So I'd like to thank my brother and Read by Nature and Dadman Walking 55. Hey. Zax, Gap After Dark, The Lady Penny, Wolverine 626, Aerial Ballet, Cam's Crash Courses, and Demaro, and me, and Sci-Fi Mombi. Well,
sounds like one, and of course we can't forget this.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Yes, it does. You're happy to different. So, any final thoughts on X-Men '97? You know what? Let me just say this. It seems to be a very well put together show. I'm a little worried by the fact they got rid of the showrunner. I am starting to believe that. Well, I can't say I'm starting to believe. There are certain people who refuse to toe the line. And hey, KRS Corporation. Hello, Kevin. I am starting to understand that there are certain people who do not operate in a way that the people who are currently running Hollywood like. And in the case of this particular showrunner, I think what it is that he wouldn't completely go with a lot of the stuff that they had wanted him to do. Okay? I think just like what happened with his time on The Witcher, he basically decided to just stand up and say something. And I think if you find yourself in a situation where the people that you're working for, or in certain cases working with, are trying to either misrepresent or trying to force you to do something, you should basically stand up for yourself. And Bo DeMaio has done that. You know?
Yeah, but again, man, that picture.
I know. Look, there's a lot of shirtless stuff, and the thing about it is, as I've learned listening to other shows, he's done that for a long time.
It's not the shirtless one that made put him in trouble.
Yeah.
You need to think every action you want to take.
Yes, there are going to be people that are going to want to knock you out of your job, and I get it. You know,
I hate to step on the ending, guys, but I actually have to.
You go ahead and go
to the ship. Everybody, I'll be back. I'm around tomorrow if anyone wants to hang out, but I'll be doing the Star Trek Discovery episode for watch along right before Doomcock, because I won't be around tonight. So look for an extra big show tomorrow, and thank you guys so much for having me on, and I'll see you guys soon.
See ya.
Bye.
Later.
See ya.
Before we end, I wanted to show this. This is amazing.
Wow.
Get tried. But why is there a coyote on the anyway, you gonna wrap it up, buddy?
Yeah, I'm wrapping it up right now. Again, it's great doing this. I enjoy doing this, and especially on those episodes where I get a chance to, again, be with Mr. Cassell, because, you know, you are the major talent. Especially with that comic of yours. Jeez. Whew.
Oh, jeez.
And of course, the guy for whom really truly makes all this just truly easy for me, my good buddy Martin.
Thank you. I think you're overshooting it, but thank you.
Look, I'm just the guy that gets on here to run his mouth, and I run it really well. Anyway, again, I just want to thank everybody for checking out the show, giving us your time, and remember, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and just contact us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and of course, Rumble. Just have a good day, and make sure to give a little thought to those in our nation's military who are out there serving and doing what needs to be done right now and making it possible for people like me to do and present a show like this. Have a good day, everybody.
See you.